This is J.J. Bradshaw, and I want to talk to you about TargetFlash. TargetFlash was invented so that you could see your hits on long-range targets, 800, 1,000, 1,200 yards. You can't tell where you hit, even with a good spotting scope. The best you can do is know that you actually hit the target. Maybe you'll hear the ding. With that in mind, I thought a wireless transmitter on the back of the target, either bolted on, magnetically mounted, clamped it. No wires, wireless to a photographic strobe might be a good way to see that you've made a hit on a long-range target. Thought about that, tried a few different iterations, and finally came up with what you're about to see, TargetFlash. As we put together a kit right out of the box, you'll see how these pieces work together to give you a nice integrated system for seeing your hits at distance. When you buy a TargetFlash kit, you get a tripod, a strobe light, a transmitter, receiver, all of the batteries that go with it, and an instruction booklet. In the next little bit of video, we'll take a look at what's in the bag. The first thing you should take out of the box is the strobe. So we're going to take it out of this sack, set it up, take a look at it. Of all the components of TargetFlash, the strobe is the energy hog. It takes 4 AA batteries, alkaline, and you should use the best batteries you can find. I prefer Duracell. They seem to last pretty well. If you look at the inside of the battery compartment here on both sides, it gives you a little logo of how the batteries should be installed. Normally, when I'm working a match and doing demos, I will change out the strobe batteries every day. Been my experience that after a 10 or 12-hour day of operation, these will be down to about 50% of their capacity, and I don't ever let them run the second day. If you're using this for you, just grinning around, why, the batteries will last quite a while. But of all the components, the strobe is the battery hog. The rest of the components, batteries will last 2 or 3 days, not a problem. Well, you take a look at the strobe. It's got a hot shoe connection on the bottom of it, which will plug into the receiver. It's got a remote right here that you can plug in with a push button. After you put the batteries in, if you throw the power switch to on, eventually you'll see a little orange neon light come on. That means that the strobe is ready to fire. Typical recharge times on this particular model of strobe run about 4 seconds with fresh batteries, about 6 with halfway depleted batteries, and when you get near the end of the battery life, it takes 7 or 8 seconds for this to fire again. So we're going to shut this off and set it aside. The next thing we'll work on is the receiver. Next thing we'll open up is the receiver. Like all TargetFlash products, the receiver comes with batteries, so it's ready to go right out of the box. I'll set these here for the moment. There's the connection to go to the top of the tripod, which is supplied in the kit. There's the hot shoe that the strobe plugs into. Channel selectors, which we'll get into momentarily. On-off switch, and a little LED. So let's put the batteries in this guy. Negative connection to the spring. All of the TargetFlash products come set to channel 0 right out of the box. If we turn the power on, you'll see the LED lights up momentarily while this goes through self-test. And then while the receiver is idle, while it's waiting for a signal from one of the transmitters, it'll sit here and periodically blink. That blinking lets you know that the receiver is active, that the batteries are good, that they've been installed properly. And let's take a look at channelization. If you look on page 5 of the booklet that comes with TargetFlash, there's an explanation and a chart which tells you what all of these are about. but I'll go through it. The same channelization on the receiver works for the transmitter. So if you know how to do one, you know how to do another. These 4 switches labeled 1, 2, 3, and 4 are coded in binary. Binaries, it's not a very big word and it's not a very big concept. Each of these switches has a value attached to it. The right-handmost switch has a value of 1. The next has a value of 2, then 4, then 8. There are potentially 16 channels to a TargetFlash unit, numbered from 0 to 15. This is currently set for channel 0. If you wished channel 1 to be the operating channel of this, you'd push this switch, which has a value of 1, towards the hot shoe. If you wanted channel 2, that switch goes off, and the switch with a value of 2 is energized. If you wanted channel 3, you already have 2 in here, add 1. 2 plus 1 is 3. Channel 4, we start with all our switches at 0. This one has a value of 4. Turn it on. So 0, 1, 0, 0. That has a value of 4. That would be channel 4. If you wanted channel 5, 4 plus 1 is 5, and so on. All the way up to 15. All of the switches aimed at the hot shoe will give you a value of 15. We're going to put this guy back to 0. And we're going to put him over with the strobe and set them up so that when we fire a transmitter, we will get a flash. The strobe mounts to the receiver on the hot shoe like so. You can screw down this ring if you want to hold it on there tightly. Not really necessary. I've never had one fall off. Energize the receiver, energize the strobe, and now we're ready to check out a transmitter and see if we can get some flashing. Let's take a look at the 2 kinds of transmitters you can get with TargetFlash, a magnetic mount and a bolt mount. The magnetic mount transmitter is the next thing we're going to look at. These come from TargetFlash with battery. All of the transmitters take a CR2 type battery. It's a 3-volt lithium cell. The transmit module itself is a compact little fellow. It has the same dip switches on it that the receiver does, and they operate in the same fashion. It has an on-off switch at the end. It has an LED which will glow either red or green, depending. Let's open up the hatch and put the battery in. Negative side to the spring. Close this little hatch back up. And normally he'll hang right like this. If this was the back of a steel target, the little module stays away from the target and it swings on this coiled cord. If we energize the power switch, you'll see that you get a brief red blink, which indicates you have the battery in properly. If you gently depress this switch, you'll get a green light, which means ready. If you press the switch down further until it clicks, it'll fire the transmitter, and if you've set up the receiver and the strobe, you'll get a flash. And there it is. In practice, once that strobe has recovered, anytime you get vibration on this, you'll get a flash. You get another hit, you get another flash. Battery life on these transmitters is a couple of days of match type use. When I'm setting these up on matches, I change out the batteries every day. Typically, when I take these batteries out and test them, they have about 60% of their capacity left. This draws very little current when it's in its idle state. The only time it draws much current at all from the battery is when it's actually transmitting when you have a hit. Next, we'll take a look at the bolt type transmitter. The bolt transmitter has identical electronics to the magnetic mount transmitter. This was designed and built first before the magnetic mounts ever came into existence. And it's still used very much. In fact, for a match, I prefer this type of transmitter, and I'll tell you why momentarily. It has the same electronics module as the magnetic mount, same on-off switch, same everything. The only difference is the vibration sensor or acceleration sensor is potted into a piece of pipe that has some holes drilled in it. Let's put a battery in him, negative side to the spring. And when we turn him on, you can see you got a flash off of him. That tells you that the battery is installed properly and is not dead. And if we gently push this button, we'll get a green light. If we push it all the way in, he fires. He is set on channel 0, same as the receiver that we have over here. The difference between this and the magnetic mount is this uses a drilled bolt. You replace one of the mounting bolts of the steel target with this drilled bolt, which I provide, the size you specify. This is a 3/8, and he pins onto this bolt using a linchpin clip. Now in practice, that clip is kind of stiff, and it's a lot easier to put it in when it's actually on a target, when you have something you can work against, but I'll give it my best. There we are. And you saw he flashed when he got the vibration from mounting on that bolt. The beauty of this particular type of transmitter is they don't fall off the target. You can take repeated large caliber hits with this kind of transmitter, and he just flops around back there. Every time you get a hit, you get a flash. And that about sums it up. So TargetFlash, something was made for shooters, by shooters. I hope you enjoy it.